Hello and welcome to Mind the Moment. This, our coffee house in the cloud, is where we invite you to join us in building community, getting centered, feeling connected, and experiencing some of the amazing mindfulness instructors New England has to offer. It's May 12th, 2020, which is the end of National Nurses Week in the United States, but which is also International Nurses Day. In the United Kingdom today, residents are being asked to put a light in their windows to honor the nurses of the National Health Service. For those of you who are lucky enough to count nurses among your families and friends, this is a great day to shine a light on them by sending a text, making a call, or just keeping them in mind and in heart. My name is John Roberts from Harvard Pilgrim Health Care's mindfulness program, and minding the moment with me this morning is Jackie Johnson, professional certified coach, founder of Choice Coaching and Consulting, and a certified mindfulness instructor through the International Mindfulness Teachers Association. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning, John. Great to be with you.
So, Jackie, you're the first person we've had here for a second time, aside from my colleague Tara Healy, which makes you at least a once returner, though I hope you do not become a non-returner to this series, no matter how wise you get. Jackie, we've already talked about nurses. Is there anyone you'd personally like to shine a light on today?
Oh boy, there are so many, and I know everyone's talking about this, and I keep seeing more and more hearts and beautiful messages as I walk through my neighborhood. So, really, just all of those people who are taking care of us all every day, who are showing up even in the midst of fear and all going on. Yeah,
Great.
thank
So in just a moment, I'll hand it back over to Jackie to lead us in a 10-minute guided meditation, after which I'll get us started in a Q&A by presenting a meditator's dilemma from my own life before turning it over to you at home and then wrapping it all up just before 9 a.m. Now, you may have noticed at the bottom of your screen an option to open up a chat box. At any point, please do so using the chat box to type questions and comments you might have. Jackie, is there anything you'd like to ask the folks at home to comment on as we get started here?
Thanks, John. As we've been doing, I'd just love to hear how people are this morning. If there's a word or a couple of words that might just speak to how you're feeling right now, what you're noticing in this moment.
As folks type, it looks like we have getting close to 100 people practicing with us this morning. It's great to be with you all today. Keep in mind that Jackie and I are the only ones who will be able to see what you type. And if we don't read your questions or comments out loud, please know that we do read and appreciate them all. And before we close, I'll point you towards some other ways that you can get in touch as well. So looking at some folks chiming in, somebody says they're feeling good and grateful. Somebody else says they're feeling grateful. So it's good, two there. Distracted, happy to be here, feeling overwhelmed with all I want and have to do. Feeling tired, but overall feeling grateful. Grateful for this opportunity to be together this morning. Wow, that's great. So a lot of gratitude this morning, which I think is wonderful. So that in mind, let me turn it over to you, Jackie, to frame up and then deliver today's meditation.
Thanks so much, John. So in last Friday's coffee house here, Tara gave definitions of mindfulness and meditation. And in short, mindfulness being a quality of mind that's awake, aware, and knows it, met with an attitude of openness, curiosity, and receptivity. And meditation, the formal practice that helps us to cultivate those qualities and to establish a stable foundation for being more mindful throughout our lives. So this attitude of openness, curiosity, and receptivity is a relationship to what is. And it's the really tricky part of this practice, especially since we're wired to make quick judgments, to determine what's good and what's bad, to protect ourselves in times of stress and difficulty. The Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung said at one point, we cannot change anything unless we accept it. I think that's really interesting to kind of noodle on. So when a discomfort or an itch arises, we typically have a reflexive response, kind of that knee-jerk response. And there's an opportunity to notice choice points like that. And rather than reacting, to thoughtfully respond. So once we accept, we have a choice to address and try and change discomfort, things we don't like, or to change our relationship to them. So this choice is true in mindfulness practice and in our lives beyond practice. By training the mind through mindfulness and meditation, we strengthen a muscle that supports us as we move through our lives and our relationships with others to live in alignment with our highest values. So this seems particularly important in this time when circumstances don't allow for some of the choices we might otherwise make. And the attitude or relationship we have to what is has a really profound impact. Our emotions are really contagious. So, in today's practice, I'd love to encourage you to bring a sense of discovery and gentle awareness to that attitude or relationship. Some teachers refer to this as a practice of kindfulness, which I think is a great descriptive word that really brings together that quality of mindfulness and the kindness or compassion. There's another teacher I heard refer to this practice really simply as notice what's happening and care. So with that, I'd love to take us into a practice. And before we settle in, just check in with yourself right now and check in with the body and notice if there's anything that might be helpful as you settle into our practice time. If it might be useful to have a bit of a stretch, or if there are any kinks maybe, that it would be helpful to just kind of do a little gentle movement as we settle in. And know that you can be seated for this practice, you can be standing, or if it's helpful, feel free to be lying down and listen to my voice. So as you're ready, just finding the posture that's right for you to settle into. And if it feels right, allowing the eyes to gently close or casting the gaze downward, just to eliminate some of the distractions. No need to be looking at the screen during practice. And perhaps taking a deep breath or two. And if you're noticing that you're feeling any stress or agitation this morning, potentially lengthening the exhale, really focusing the attention on that lengthened exhale. It's a way of activating the parasympathetic nervous system that really supports settling in, quieting reactivity. And if you're feeling tired, which I noticed somebody said they were, then attending more to the inhalation. And just settling in and feeling contact points, the feet on the floor, perhaps the hands in the lap. And also feeling into this sense of community that you are practicing this morning with about 100 other people. And we're really here supporting each other. So what if you could know that you were doing this right? What might help you to bring a quality of lightness to our practice this morning? What might make this easy? For me, sometimes that's noticing a sense of dropping from my head to the area below my neck. Just feeling the energy kind of settle more in the body. Just kind of doing a scan of the body to see what's here right now. If there are areas that might benefit from softening, checking in with the area around the forehead, the eyes, the cheeks, the jaw, down through the neck and shoulders, just kind of doing a sweep of the body. And now bringing the attention to sound. There's no need to go looking for sound. Simply allowing the attention to rest in the direct experience of hearing what's here. Might be that there are sounds outside the room, sounds inside, the sound of my voice. Just noticing how sounds arise and dissipate all on their own. And now gently shifting the attention, allowing hearing to drop into the background and bringing awareness to the body as a whole. Sitting and breathing, aware of whatever arises with a sense of trust that it belongs. And if it feels right, as you're ready, bringing the attention in a more focused way to the breath. And you might notice that most prominently at the nostrils, in the chest, in the belly, or it might be that you notice the sensation of the whole body breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. Seeing if you can notice just the experience of one breath, the natural rising on the in-breath and falling on the out-breath, almost like the swell if you were floating in a lake or on the ocean, just that natural process. The breath is happening. It's happening, and this is just an opportunity to notice that. And if you find it challenging to focus on the breath, knowing that you can choose a more neutral anchor, and that might be going back to hearing, could be the sensation of the feet in contact with the floor, the hands in the lap or the palms touching each other. Whatever makes this easiest for you in this moment. And noticing where the attention is right now, what the attitude of the mind is right now. And bringing it back to the anchor, simply, gently, compassionately, with kindness, as many times as it wanders. Each time it wanders, we simply notice, and it's not a problem. This is the moment of mindfulness. And if at any time a sensation, a thought, or an emotion becomes so strong that it pulls the attention, you can see if you can allow it to drop again into the background and come back to the anchor, or you might choose to simply shift the attention to noticing whatever it is, that sensation, that thought or emotion. And perhaps to softly, gently label it, just with a word. Might be fear, might be worry. And even if it's helpful, to place a hand gently on the heart with a compassionate message like, it's okay. Everybody feels this way sometimes. And you might also notice if there are moments of peace. And to note that as well. Again, checking in with the attitude of the mind in this moment. And in our last moments of practice, you can stay with a more focused practice, or you might choose to broaden the awareness. So you can stay with the focus on the breath, with sound, with contact points, or open to sensations again of the body as a whole. You might even include sounds, thoughts, and emotions, and simply noticing the natural way that all sensations, thoughts, and emotions arise and dissipate. I'd like to share a poem called The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least sound, in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in his beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time, I rest in the grace of the world and am free. May we all be safe and well. May we be peaceful. May we live with ease, with joy, and with kindness. And may our practice be a benefit to all. As we bring this practice to a close, as you're ready, slowly allowing the eyes to open if they've been closed, and bringing the attention from this more inward focus back to this supportive community. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Jackie. That's wonderful. So I'd like to kick off the Q&A section here by presenting what I'm calling a meditator's dilemma, something that applies to my own life and perhaps also to the lives of others. This dilemma was actually inspired by a question that landed in the chat box during last Friday's session, but which we didn't have a chance to answer. The question goes something like this. What are meditation strategies one can activate in the moment, like when talking with someone one-on-one, that allow a person to participate and observe more effectively? Is that even possible? So I can tell you this question resonated with me on a personal level in terms of how I think about my relationship with my father. It felt especially resonant this past weekend as we celebrated Mother's Day here in the US. A new tradition for me has been to call my father on Mother's Day because my mother, due to illness, no longer has the ability to speak, and so it is left to my father, who spends most of her waking moments by her side, to speak for her. This strikes my sisters and me as a bit ironic because between my parents, my father was always the much quieter one. My mother was the granddaughter of a man who made it to America, stowed away on an ocean liner from Greece, and she was the daughter of a man who played the organ in the movie theater in the back of a candy store in Illinois. She was never at a loss for words. My father, meanwhile, had early on adopted the stoical habits of his Welsh Protestant forebears, who believed it was best to neither be seen nor to be heard. So there was this long period during which I felt some resentment towards my father for not communicating with me as effectively as I might have liked. This was, in fact, a major realization of the first phase of my mindfulness practice, getting a handle on this river of mental chatter rushing past in the background of my mind, much of which was being fed by rivulets of ill will and indignation, either directed towards others like my father or directed towards myself. And seeing the degree to which I was caught up in this river, and thanks to the efforts of many wise teachers, I was able to grab a hold of the branch of mindfulness practice and use it to pull myself out to the shore so that I could get a better look at this river of thought that I had been trapped in. So, that early phase of my mindfulness practice, I was eager to figure out how this practice could help me, how it could help me become a better person, how it could help me to relax around the things which triggered me. As my practice deepened, though, an interesting pivot took place. And this pivot reminds me of something the late film critic Roger Ebert said about the movie La Dolce Vita. He remarked that as a young man, he identified with the protagonist of the film, but as an older man, he identified with the people whom the protagonist's actions affected. Likewise, as I've gotten older, I've begun to ask not what my mindfulness practice can do for me, but what it may in fact be able to do for others through me. So I've worked on trying to slow down my feelings around my father in an attempt to appreciate his own struggles. I've tried to see him not just as the person I grew up seeing him as, but as others might see him, as he might see himself. These are all parts of the picture, though none of them make up the whole picture. And so I've been gripped by this positive compulsion to communicate more effectively with him, but I still don't feel I have a clear roadmap to follow in doing so. I find myself trying to fill the silence that inevitably arises between us with what I think he might want to know and understand. My partner, Annie, watched this happening over the holidays last year and suggested I try a different tack, not rushing to fill the space between us, but rather representing myself to him as open and present within the space and ready to receive what he might want me to know and understand, all the while knowing this might only come to fruition over time. So this brings me back around to that question concerning specific strategies one can activate in the moment that allow a person to participate in and observe more effectively their interactions with others. There won't always be an Annie with us in every situation to remind us to be more mindful with our fathers or our friends or our colleagues. So how can we learn better to do this for ourselves? I was hoping maybe you could comment on that.
Yeah, such an important question, John. I really love that. Thanks. So there's a way in which sometimes I think of mindfulness as kind of a superpower. Research tells us that we spend, as humans, almost 50% of our time mind wandering, ruminating about the past or worrying about the future. And if you think about that, that really occupies a tremendous amount of mental bandwidth, mental and emotional bandwidth, how we can get caught up in stories. And so there's something about when we're able to be really present, and again, with that attitude of openness and receptivity, that in my own experience, it almost feels like time can, you use the word slow down. And it's almost like if we can clear out a lot of that other noise, which is certainly easier said than done, this practice is often described as simple but not easy. So just want to be clear that what I'm talking about here is simple and the practice of a lifetime, really, especially with those people who most evoke emotional response, often people closest to us. But so the more we can kind of cultivate that ability to be present, the more we become aware of that spaciousness, that bandwidth to notice what's happening in the moment and to accept it and to choose from that place. And so there are a couple of different tools, and I know some of the other teachers who've been here in the coffee house have referred to these. There's a couple of different acronyms that can be helpful tools. There's STOP, which stands for stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. And then there's also RAIN, which stands for recognize, accept, investigate, and either note or nurture. And I know that Tara's going to be soon starting a beginning mindfulness class that will be open and available to everybody. And I suspect she'll go more into these practices, but they're both ways of noticing what is here and bringing more spaciousness so that we can respond. And an example of a way to use stop, and I actually had a situation recently with an elderly relative of mine who was sharing a story about having spent half a day out shopping. And I noticed a sort of reactivity arising in me. And in that moment of stopping, taking a breath, I could observe that there was not an invitation for me to comment, for me to share thought, which I tried to do, and notice that it just wasn't serving. So with that, I was able to sort of just observe that that wasn't particularly useful and pause and move on with different conversations. So something like that can be really helpful.
Thank you for that, Jackie. There's a question that came in, which I think is related. So this person asks, I wonder how we can balance compassion and self-acceptance, the desire for self-improvement, and pursuing a better mindfulness practice. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's great. So there's a reason that we call this practice, and it really is working with that balance. And I think this is a practice that really takes a great deal of patience and kindness. So it's really about finding that balance that involves, I think, a tremendous amount of trust and a tremendous amount of just seeing what arises. And in this situation I just shared with my family member, just some of it comes of trial and error and noticing that sometimes sharing an opinion that's not invited isn't helpful. So the next time, trying to balance that through that greater sense of spaciousness with an alternate response.
Hmm. And one of our other participants mentions some nice advice here. Deep listening is a good strategy in one-on-one interactions. Actually listening to what the other person is saying, not rehearsing what I'm going to say.
Yes.
If I'm tense in a conversation, taking deep breaths helps me to calm down and be present. I think that's kind of sums it up.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Well, all right, then that might be a wonderful note for us to actually wrap up on. So we'll be back with you every Tuesday and Friday here at 8:30 a.m. Eastern Time. You can find the links to these sessions and other resources at our main site at harvardpilgrim.org/mindfulness. Please do drop us a line at askmtm@harvardpilgrim.org or leave a comment on our Facebook page. Let us know what's on your mind. What do you like about what we've been doing? What could we be doing better? What questions do you have? You can also leave us a voicemail at my desk number, which is 617-509-7047. You can rewatch this session and older sessions on our YouTube page and find guided meditations also on our SoundCloud page. Jackie, I just wanted to, I guess we're talking about shining a light on people, and I just wanted to shine a light on you for a moment because I've heard that you've been making, helping make masks for folks, cloth masks, and I think it's a wonderful thing, and I just wanted to thank you for that. And I'm not sure if you have any, if you want to tell people how they can get involved in a similar effort. Or...
Well, there's a group here where I live in Connecticut that I learned about that was doing that for folks in the state. So depending where you are, I think there are a lot of similar efforts. And I know in Connecticut also the governor has put out a list of volunteer activities for people. So I imagine there are some similar resources in Massachusetts and throughout New England.
That's great. And if folks who are watching have those sorts of volunteer opportunities that they're taking part in, that they want to let other folks know about, please post some comments on our Facebook page so that other folks can see what's going on. Jackie Johnson, thank you so much for minding the moment with us this morning.
Great to be with you. Thank you, John. Thank you all for your kind attention.
Yes, thanks everyone for joining. We hope to see you again here soon. Have a momentous day.